morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the latest edition of Hot Sauce Releases. This session is about finding and fixing UI issues before your customer sees them. So, welcome everyone. So, we have a great agenda outlined for you. We're going to discuss why should visual testing matter to you. We're going to go through some common use cases and challenges for enterprises and QA teams. We're gonna go through some Sauce visual highlights. We'll have a demo for you, a great quick demo for you, and then we'll end with a Q&A. Before we jump into it, let's do some quick intros. I am Carlos Carvajal. I'm a senior product market manager here at Sauce Labs. And with me today is my esteemed colleague, Ed.
Hi, everyone. Ed Lavalette, product manager here for Visual. I'm glad to have you on board for our webinar today.
Okay, why should visual testing matter to you? Let's go for it. So some quick stats for you guys. So 52% of users said a bad mobile experience made them less likely to engage with a company. Not surprising, more than half. 70% of customers abandoned purchases because of a bad user experience. And I happen to be included in both of these stats, right? We all have very busy lives. When we go to make a purchase, when we go to investigate a purchase, doing some research, we expect a seamless user experience. So if I'm on a website and I'm buying sneakers and this is what I expect, but I get this instead, two things automatically come to mind. One, I either clicked on the wrong link, it's a malicious site, it's a phishing scam, right? Because we expect enterprises and organizations to have consistent user experience visually as well as functionally. The second thought is, there's something going on with this website. I'm not ready to make a purchase. There could be some back-end issues. I don't want to enter my personal information, my credit card information. So I'll just bounce. I'll go to a different site. I'll go to a competitor and just wait on that. And we all know what happens when a customer waits, purchase and revenue streams are lost.
And do you think there's also, just as an aside, sort of the sort of Amazon effect in my mind? Like, we expect that flawless experience of purchase, notifications, delivery, like the whole thing should be completely seamless. And this is just the first step of that process.
Okay, so you may say, okay, well, I do functional testing. Well, that's not enough, right? Because functional testing is going to validate if a user could click an item and add it to the shopping cart. It's going to validate if a user clicks on an item and it's going to take them to the right detail of that item, allow you to log in, allow you to check out. Those are functional testing that's validated. But the visual aspect, if the color scheme is correct, if there's something misaligned, if their text that's misaligned, if their visual, as we saw with the sneaker, that's off, right? Functional testing is not going to validate that. So that's why it's not enough. So what visual regression testing, what does it do? What are the core tasks? Number one, it's going to compare new builds to visual baselines. So you have your UX designer, they're going to provide you what the application or the website should look like, and it's going to compare to that baseline. It's going to flag unexpected UI changes automatically, right? So we try to eliminate those manual testing. And a good regression tool should work across browsers, devices, and operating systems, right? Even legacy operating systems and legacy devices as well. And so what are the benefits? So three core benefits. One is going to protect your brand. The most trusted, recognized, and world-class organizations understand there's value behind the brand. Think of huge organizations, Coca-Cola Red, Pepsi Blue. They understand there's value behind that brand and that visual representation. It's going to allow you to release faster, right? We're going to minimize those costly regression works going back and forth, fixing those visual issues. And lastly, it's going to boost customer satisfaction, right? By engaging more customers, you're going to have more app usage. You're going to have higher ratings on the app marketplaces, wherever they may be. And ultimately, that's going to bubble up to increase revenue, which is what organizations and enterprises really care about.
Yeah, and on that middle part,
Yeah.
Carlos, I mean, faster releases, just from our poll, we've got half the people are not doing any yet, which is okay, or doing it manually. And both of those will be, either labor intensive and slow or not there at all. So this idea that we can actually speed up releases sort of ties hand in hand with making sure that you've built some sort of way to do that in a more automated flow.
Absolutely. Not only does it save the costly rework, but it's going to allow, as it says, release faster, meaning you're going to get your ship out faster to your customers. You're going to have that increased revenue. If you think about retail, it's coming up, the retail season. You want to have those latest updates to the applications immediately to have the
Yeah,
consumers
indeed.
go and get it. Okay, next. Okay, Ed, I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So we're going to dive into some common use cases and some of the challenges that we see from our customers and across the QA landscape. So again, we have our typical sort of sneaker application here, and thinking about manual testing specifically. If there's a new release and you have to come back and review this, you're manually looking at it to make sure it hasn't changed, and those changes could be not sort of directly changes, as in physically coded, but we see things with different content or imagery that's changed, CSS updates. There are obviously coding errors, but all these things get really difficult to test in a functional way, because if you're looking at the right side, which is our new release, there are actually 6 errors on the right, and some of them are a little easier to spot than others. So here you might have noticed that the shopping cart and the menu and one of these images isn't quite right. But other ones are more subtle. So you really got to pay attention to catch all these little nuanced changes. And this is where being able to understand what you're supposed to look like and then do quick regressions against that baseline helps you sort of hit those problems early rather than getting them in, God forbid, into production, but way later in your development cycle when they could have been easily caught early. This is part of a shift left thought process to make sure that we're catching those as early as we can and not letting them get out into the wild, of course. And all of those things, we try to help solve with different kind of solutions in different parts of our product. So if we talk about one big use case, mobile, obviously building, a mobile app or a mobile web product, responsive designs are very common and popular. If you think about going across the mobile form factor, just on iPhones alone, never mind Androids, we got all sorts of shapes and sizes. Obviously, different operating systems, and within that, we got more different kinds of browsers might need to look at. So there's a lot of mix and match there that is really hard to do manually, or in sort of in a assertion style way. But the other nice thing about our visual solution, of course, it ties into the SOS, platform and infrastructure. That means we've got our real devices, our simulations, our cross-browser testing is all available for these kinds of tests, which makes it really extensible for your business model. So mobile obviously is a key part of most people's business today, given that we love to walk around with our little mobile phones in our hands all day long. The other thing about these products and content is there's a lot of dynamic content. Now, in this very simple use case, we have our sneaker store, and as you may know, when you buy something, your cart will change. So if your testing flow goes through the actual purchasing process, that area will be different every time depending on how many items you put in it, which means we have to ignore that change. Otherwise, it's going to fail. So we have a way to say, nope, we're not testing that very specific portion of the screen. And this obviously comes up with any kind of dynamic content. Think simple things like your account screen, place where you put your name. It'll obviously be different for every person, but the other parts of it should remain accurate and correct. So this is sort of a really important part of testing software where we understand some content is changed, but some should be static in this case. The other thing I want to point out here is PDFs, which is really kind of a critical piece of software solutions in certain industries, not all, but in certain industries like banking and medical and travel. Think about boarding passes or other documents. The actual PDF itself is part of the experience. It's an extension of the UI, which means that also has to be correct and accurate when it comes to the PDF creation and maybe printing or whatever you do with your PDFs later. But the idea that we've connected this flow to go all the way through the app and then through the PDF process as well, again, lets you extend your brand make sure that that data is correct, make sure you're producing for your customers the right output. Again, nothing worse than losing a customer because we can't simply create the documents they expect in the way they expect them. So again, it's extending that experience beyond the UI, if you will, into the full experience of a product.
Now let's see firsthand how Sauce Visual gives us instant visual insights, lets us set our baseline test, and works right alongside the functional results you already rely on. Every test running Sauce Visual ends up here in the visual testing dashboard. Green tests have already been accepted and either set as a baseline test, had their changes approved, or didn't see any changes at all. Red tests have been rejected, while yellow tests are up for review. If we take a look at our baseline, we can see Sauce Visual captures the full screen and works on any operating system, version, mobile device, or browser that matters. Once your tests have been run with Sauce Visual enabled, you can use the captured screens to set a baseline for what should be expected visually. By approving the image, this sets it as a baseline when no baseline has been detected. This also ties directly back to the functional tests that execute the visual test in the code. With one click, we can see the functional test and all the metrics Sauce Labs captures, like screenshots, videos, and detailed logs. It also shows where the Sauce Visual test is capturing the screen. The next time this test is run, any changes to the baseline are recorded, and you're provided with a pixel by pixel outline of what changed on this latest test. By clicking on a captured screen, you get a side-by-side view of the changes from the baseline. You can also set an overlay that places each captured screen on top of each other and allows you to use the slider to increase the visibility from one image to the next. With our AI-powered Diff Inspector, you're able to get a breakdown of the exact changes, including changes of images, positioning, and colors, all the way down to the pixel. If the changes are accepted, we can set a new baseline and move on to the next image. If the changes are rejected, we can leave a comment as to why. Because Sauce Visual picks up on all changes, there are cases where the change to the UI can be ignored. This is especially useful for dynamic images and constantly changing elements. With the ignored regions option, you can set an area of the screen to ignore any changes to the UI from your baseline. Once this area is set, it'll be ignored in Sauce Visual Testing, giving you complete control over how your UI is handled. Once our visual test has been accepted or rejected, we can continue testing the visual elements of other areas of our UI. With visual testing, you can accept or reject entire groups, entire changes that are there, or accept only the newest changes. Sauce Visual doesn't apply only to the UI elements of your application. It also applies to PDF and PDF testing. In many regulated industries, the documents are the product. A single wording or allergen label slip can trigger multi-million-dollar recalls. Sauce Visual treats every page of a PDF like a screen, capturing, versioning, and checking for changes in seconds. You approve the changes and preserve the audit trail. Now you've seen Sauce Visual coverage from mobile UI to critical PDFs, all executed with a single line of code and no pipeline bottlenecks. Whatever your stack, Sauce Visual gives you one dashboard, one workflow, and protects every pixel, allowing you to release with confidence and increasing consumer trust.
So I got a couple of questions. So there was a question about retention with regards to visual testing. So the baselines should be retained. Currently, it's 90 days. And the assumption there is that when you're thinking about your baseline of your product and your visual testing, that you would iterate on your product within that time frame if it was an active product. The results of that can be tested at any time, and if you accept some changes in your testing process, that can be turned into a new baseline immediately. So that's sort of the process there. One other that I had that I was thinking about in this presentation, when we think about SOS as a platform, one of the things is to think about how the flow would work from your pipelines. And with regards to our tool, we have natural integrations with Jenkins and Harness and other tools. So connecting our platform to existing pipelines and then into Visual, that's all native to what we've built. So there's no concern about how this part of SOS would work with regards to your tools, your frameworks, your CI/CD pipelines, whatever. It's all part of the native SOS experience. So it makes it a very easy to integrate from some traditional automated tests into our visual tests. It's a very singularly thought out process for us.
Okay, we have one question. In case of any screen has multiple UI changes detected by Source Visual, do we get classification of such errors? Example, style change, context change, structure change, etc.
Yeah, there's not like a categorization per se, but when you look through the different the output there, it'll show you what we see as the change. So we are looking at the DOM and the code to understand what those changes were. Now I can give you sort of this edge case, which is really challenging, perhaps, which is if you took an image and you replace it with another image and it was the exact same size and name and location and everything was the same, except there's some changes in the actual physical image itself. It's a little hard to detect that change and what that means because the code is exactly the same. So we can't quite see why that would be wrong, other than it's wrong. But in cases where there's code changes, we actually have that as part of the DOM response. You can see why we've seen these changes in the code that are reflected in the UI. But it's an interesting idea to think about categorization. So I like that.
All right, if there's no more questions, again, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate you spending some of the time with us.